It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And it is a great day to be alive on Westwood One Sports. Heating up out there. Oh, yeah, it's getting hot. Summer is here. The Mets are still the Mets. Don't worry. That hasn't changed from all the way back in the spring when they started Metsing all over themselves. That just a small sidelight to what was a huge day in sports all over the world as two massive upsets happened in the World Cup yesterday. Both of them on penalty kicks. If you didn't stay up for the second one, we'll talk about that as the Netherlands were sent home, sent packing by Morocco, who will face Canada in just a few days. There's a lot going on to talk about World Cup-wise. That's why we'll have Anthony DeBundo from The Ringer on in about an hour and 20 minutes from now. It is Westwood One Sports. I am Chris Mack, in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. You can always take us with you. Maybe you're on a nice long ride to vacation, wherever that may take you. A cottage up by the lake, a beach house down by the shore. Wherever you're going, we're always inside the Westwood One Sports app, the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. The offseason news actually hasn't slowed down all that much in the NFL as we have the continuing Brandon Ayuk saga. Last I checked, he did not post on social media yesterday, so a golf clap for Brandon. The Brendan Sorsby story, still sitting out there, waiting to see where it goes. And, of course, Terry and Arnold cut by the Lions yesterday. We'll talk to Andrew Brandt. He was the VP of the Green Bay Packers for a decade. He's the executive director for the study of sports law at Villanova. If there's someone to talk to about the business of sports, particularly football, Andrew Brandt is the guy. We'll talk to him at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. The NBA offseason certainly has not cooled off. A John Morant trade, Porzingis staying in Golden State, Kawhi maybe back to Toronto. Huh? Yeah, all of it is on the table as NBA free agency opens at 6 o'clock. So we've got a lot to get to. And even though they don't give you the little paper thing that you could punch the holes out of with a number 2 pencil, we're going to vote on our all-star ballots anyway here today on You Better You Bet. And what have they done to these all-star ballots? I don't like them. Sorry. Old man's going to shake his fist at the cloud for just a few minutes. Coming up here in the first hour of the show before 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. But let's get to the biggest stories right off the top. The 5 biggest stories of the day and what we call the high 5.
5.
About 5 years. Oh, Porzingis drops the anvil. Parachutes in and slams it home.
Kevin Harlan and Candace Parker on Prime. That was during that Warriors-Clippers play-in game a couple months ago. Kristaps Porzingis coming up big. And the Warriors, they want him back, so they're bringing him back on a 2-year deal. A 2-year deal that could complicate some things. So where do the Warriors go from here just 24 hours after we thought everything was setting up for LeBron James and Anthony Davis to head to the Bay Area to team up with Steph Curry and Draymond Green? I don't know, but it feels a whole lot less likely now. Draymond Green opted out of his player option, so they're going to have to re-sign him. And you combine the Draymond contract with the Porzingis number, and the salary cap experts tell you all of a sudden there's not a lot of money to go to LeBron if he does want to go to Golden State. And then you couple all that with the fact that the Washington Wizards are raising their hand in the back of class like, excuse me, teacher, nobody told me there would be a test. Nobody asked the Wizards if they actually wanted to get involved in this. Everyone just assumed it would happen, and they don't sound especially interested now. So if the Wizards aren't interested in dealing Anthony Davis to Golden State, and LeBron isn't necessarily interested in going anywhere other than LA without his buddy AD there, maybe it doesn't happen at all. Is it still possible that LeBron could end up in Golden State? Yeah, it's possible. But compared to where we were 24 hours ago, it feels a whole lot less probable. We'll get into how this plan is dying on the vine before it even had a chance to bloom a little bit later. But next.
4.
This is hooked to left field, and it's going to get down for a base hit and past Soto to the wall. Springer around second, and now the ball is dropped, and Springer is coming around to score.
Look, take it from a guy who coached both his son's t-ball team when he played and coached his daughter's softball team, or helped anyway. I have seen some worse things on a baseball field than what the Mets are currently doing. That was Dan Schulman on Sportsnet Canada last night. A Little League home run for George Springer of the Toronto Blue Jays, as the Mets have gone full yakety sax. They just keep Metsing all over themselves. I don't know how it gets worse. Like, you've got former assistant coaches calling out the GM on podcasts, as Eric Chavez did on Foul Territory yesterday, questioning whether David Stearns is actually qualified for his job. I don't know. I think he did a pretty good job as an AGM, part of the machine in Milwaukee. But everything is in question in New York. Everything. The Mets are a disaster. And I don't know how they stop Metsing all over themselves. Start tearing it down now. I know people are going to tell you, no, why would you deal assets away now when you wait for the market to heat up closer to the trade deadline, Chris? What are you thinking, man? I'll tell you why you do it. Because you've bottomed out. And you're going to have to do everything you can to try and pivot entirely this offseason. You know, that doesn't include maybe pivoting away from Juan Soto. I won't go that far. But, you know, we can admit that the Bo Bichette experiment has been a disaster. We can admit that a lot of things have not gone right. We can admit that with so many teams looking for starting pitching, you can still get a quality deal for Freddie Peralta right now. If you're David Stearns, after spending the last week answering questions from reporters in New York about why you didn't fire yourself instead of the manager, maybe it's time to start making moves. Maybe it's time to show everybody that you're ready to, I guess, pull this thing off to the shoulder before all four tires blow. No, that's not fair. All four tires have blown. They put the donut on. That has flown off as well. It's a complete and utter disaster in Queens. The Mets can't stop Metsing all over themselves. Next.
3.
Trade with Toronto. My understanding, it would bring a good amount of draft capital back, and then it just becomes a measure of, is it enough? What's the threshold to get a deal done? And that's what the Clippers and the Raptors have been discussing.
Shams Charania on ESPN talking about the Clippers and the Raptors trying to hammer out the framework of a Kawhi Leonard deal. The Clippers have no interest in extending Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, up until he realized that, had no interest in playing anywhere other than L.A. All of a sudden, he's come back around to, I guess Toronto wasn't so bad. I can't do the Kawhi laugh. But that's the one place where he's willing to go. So now the Raptors have to piece together a deal that will give the Clippers just a boatload of picks and allow Kawhi Leonard to return to, and I know what he did in San Antonio, but return to the place where he had the best year of his career, 2019. The finals, I've mentioned it before, I still remember exactly where I was when that ball bounced up off the rim, what was it, half a dozen times before it fell through. Still remember where I was. And that is a moment that I got to think Raptors fans, every basketball fan north of the border would be more than willing to try and replicate. Bring Kawhi back to the Raptors. But this is where we're at with NBA free agency, now just about 9 hours away. Everything is on the table. Kawhi back to Toronto? Go ahead, raise your hand if you saw that one coming. No, you didn't. No, not until about maybe 24 hours ago. You didn't think that was happening. But in an Eastern Conference, where I've mentioned it before, you've got a big mushy middle once you work your way past the Knicks, the Celtics, and the Pistons, where everybody from 4 through 10 kind of feels like they're floating in the same space, looking for an edge to take themselves solidly into that group with the big three I just mentioned, or push themselves closer to that group. The Raptors acquiring Kawhi Leonard would be that kind of move. That would be the kind of move that takes the Raptors from, you know what, as long as we don't fall into the play-in, we're good. 4, 5, 6 seed, we'll be all right too. No, we want to battle with the big boys in the Eastern Conference. It's going to happen. Who knows? A lot is going to happen in the NBA over the next 9 hours and then beyond when free agency opens up at 6 o'clock. Again, we'll keep you up to date on it absolutely every single minute of the day here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet, starting out the show as we do every time with the High Five, the 5 biggest stories of the day. Number 2.
Been in this position for Paraguay. But he scores! Paraguay have done it! Paraguay have won it! And they booted Germany out of the World Cup!
Courtesy of Fox, that was the call as Paraguay won on penalty kicks over Germany yesterday. Last night, if you stayed up to watch it, you saw Morocco do the same to the Netherlands. And all of a sudden, 2 of the top 10 teams in the world are gone on the same day in the round of 32. Massive. Germany, for what it's worth, in their history, had missed 1 penalty kick. In their entire history, they missed 3 yesterday. Both of those penalty kick rounds were wild. You can complain all you want if you're a German fan about the review on what would have been the go-ahead and possible game-winning goal in the second half, in stoppage time, pardon me. But you make contact with the goalie. I don't want to go all NHL on you here. You make contact with the goalie inside the crease there, there's a chance it's going to get called, especially when the goalie goes to the ground. And you shouldn't have been in that position against Paraguay to begin with if you're Germany. So they're gone. The Netherlands, they're gone. By the way, has it been mentioned that Virgil van Dijk is like a straight doppelganger for TJ Houshmandzadeh? Or is that just like the 2010s football fan in me coming out? TJ, who's your mama? So Netherlands eliminated as well, and this World Cup is as wide open as it could possibly be. And with a wide open World Cup, is that a good sign for the U.S.? Talked yesterday about how maybe our expectations for the U.S. men's national team, with everyone, Jurgen Klopp included, calling them the best version of the U.S. men's national team they've ever seen. Eric Winalda saying they should go to the semis. All of that causing me to wonder, shouldn't our expectations be higher? Shouldn't it just be more than, hey, let's hang out at a watch party and jump up and down if Christian Pulisic scores? Let's be excited about going to the quarterfinals against possibly Spain or Portugal, although given how things have gone in the round of 32 so far, maybe neither one of them is there in the quarters. Shouldn't we expect the U.S. men's national team to go farther? And is this wide open World Cup possibly, with them having the best version of a team they've ever had, the perfect prescription for the U.S. men's national team to have the best result they've ever had? Again, we'll talk to Anthony DeBundo, who's covering the World Cup for The Ringer, in about an hour and 10 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. Number one.
One.
Oh, Morant with a steal! Morant for two!
FanDuel Sports Network Southeast. Ja Morant no longer a Memphis Grizzly. He's headed to Portland. And the return, I mean, if you're a Grizzlies fan, I guess you'd call it uninspiring. Is that what we'd call it? Yeah, I guess uninspiring is a fair way to put it. But at the same time, if you're a Grizzlies fan, we talked to John Martin from Memphis last week. I think you're just happy to get out from underneath Ja Morant without having to give up any assets. And Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray, okay, yeah, sure. We'll see how those two pieces work out. It's more about getting out from underneath the Ja Morant era and handing the keys to the car to Cam Boozer, allowing him to take over as the face of the franchise going forward. That's the Memphis side of things. The Portland side of things, very, very interesting. And I want to get into that in greater detail in just a little more than 5 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. But before we do all that, before we break down both sides of the deal and how Ja Morant plays with Damian Lillard in the Blazers backcourt, and are there enough shots to go around to keep Denny Avdija happy as well, let's just take a step back and think about where we were with Ja Morant 5 years ago. This was a guy who was growing into one of the faces of the NBA. And between injuries and off-court stupidity, kind of frittered it all away. Now, does he still possess the ability, as you heard during that highlight, to be one of the more explosive players in the league? Yeah, I think it's still in there. I mean, absolutely fearless going to the hole. Can't really shoot the three, but hey, you're in a backcourt with Dame Lillard now. You don't need to shoot the three. Fearless going to the hole. Massive dunks. This was a guy who 5 years ago was dominating social media feeds with his highlights. And once again, we were talking about as a possible future face of the NBA. If not at that point, one of the current faces of the NBA. And now he's basically, sorry, no disrespect to Jeremy Grant or Chris Murray, and I can say whatever I want about them now because I said no disrespect, was given away to the Portland Trail Blazers. You can be on top at one moment, and with just a little bit of stupidity, it can all be gone. Ask Brandon Ayuk. Ask Brendan Sorsby. Ask Terry and Arnold. We'll get into all of those issues with Andrew Brandt later at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. But I want to dive just a little bit deeper into the Ja Morant to Portland deal and more about how it works spinning forward here on Westwood One Sports. Again, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos this morning. You can always watch the show, youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. And while there, let us know what you think in the comments. You can always pick up the phone and call, too, 310-840-4910. Coming up in about 24 minutes, somebody called yesterday, and I will oblige this person who called yesterday to ask a question about what we were doing on the show. And I will dedicate an entire segment to this person. That's coming up a little bit later. But next, Ja Morant's fall from grace over the last few years, one thing. How does he get back to where we once thought he was headed, to becoming one of the faces of the NBA? And how does it all come together in Portland? That's next, right here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Mack IN for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. It is Westwood One Sports. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, it's all about Bill in Toronto. Who's Bill in Toronto? And why is it all about him? I'll explain that to you in 15 minutes. Top of the hour, we continue our day-by-day power rankings of different NFL positional groups as we're in that quiet period, usually quiet period in the NFL between mini camps and training camps opening up in just a few weeks around the league. We will power rank the top 5 NFL offensive lines. And I know that's not very sexy. Oh, offensive line. But I know there are some out there who absolutely love the trenches. They love the big uglies. And that segment is for you. We will get down into the trenches. We'll get dirty. We'll get nasty. We'll talk O-lines at the top of the hour here on Westwood One Sports. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting small businesses with affordable coverage options. Get a quote today at progressivecommercial.com. So how's this going to work in Portland? And maybe just as importantly, what's the next domino to fall? Because that backcourt is crowded now in Portland. We'll get to the next domino in just a second. I want to talk about what's immediately in front of the Portland Trail Blazers now with the acquisition of Ja Morant. And that's a starting 5 that I think could work really well with new head coach Mike Inori. A lot of people are going to ask, well, listen, Damian Lillard's a ball-dominant guard. How's he going to feel about Ja handling things? He'll be fine. He's 36, and he's coming off a major injury. I think the best possible thing for Dame is to work off of Ja at this point. It's going to create space for him. So I think they coexist in the backcourt just fine. Now, again, there are questions about how you're going to divvy up minutes with this many guards on the roster, but we'll get to that in a second. Because I think there's an opportunity for Portland to do something with all of those guards. But as for how the starting 5 work, Ja at the point, Dame at the off guard, Denny Avdija still in the lineup, obviously. Tamani Kamara is your power forward, and Donovan Clingan down low as well. That's a solid starting 5 that I think gives Mike Inori the opportunity to emphasize the pick and roll and floor spacing to find those open shots for Dame and Denny. I'm not going to call Ja Morant a distributor. He's still going to want to attack the rim. But in attacking the rim, the space that's going to be opened up on the perimeter, if Ja Morant can really capitalize, really embrace the idea of being a dribble drive guard who attacks the hole and uses that space to kick it out to the shooters in Damian Lillard and Denny Avdija, then I think you've got a great opportunity to see a resurrection of Ja Morant's career. If he's willing to sit and learn at the foot of Damian Lillard. And look, Dame's had his issues in the past, but obviously nothing like what Ja Morant went through in Memphis. So to sit and learn from Dame, to share the backcourt with him, and you've still got the opportunity. If they don't end up moving on from any of these guards, which I think would be kind of crazy because you can't play all 5 of them enough minutes. Between Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday on the roster as well. Ja, Dame, there's just not enough minutes to go around. But if they go into the season with all 5 of those guys still on the roster, then you've got a wonderful opportunity to manage the minutes of Damian Lillard throughout the season as well and make sure he's healthy and fresh for maybe it's the play-in again. Maybe it's a playoff spot. Look, I'm not going to tell you that this version of the Portland Trailblazers is a title contender or even a Western Conference contender. The West is still all about the Spurs and the Thunder. So I'm not going to get out over my skis here and start making ridiculous claims about how the Trailblazers are suddenly contenders. But I do think the opportunity exists for the Blazers to be obviously better than they were a year ago, and for Ja Morant to get things back on track in Portland, to show these learned lessons from the pitfalls in Memphis, many of them self-induced. And that lineup, that's not a bad lineup. Morant, Lillard, Avdija, Kamara, Klingon. That's a decent starting five. That's a good place to start if you're looking to go from, oh, yay, we got into the play-in, to, no, we're at least a play-in team. And maybe we're even showing up in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. But I think it does all come back to how Micah Nori handles that backcourt and creates shooting opportunities for Damian Lillard and Denny Avdija via the pick and roll and the penetration from Ja Morant. I could see it working very well. But a lot of this is on Ja Morant, too. Can he find that part of his game again that feels like it's been missing more often than not over the last 3 years? If he does, the Trailblazers are a much better team. Now, what's the next domino to fall? I think with this glut of guards on the roster now, it doesn't make sense to go into this season with all of these guys. Now, I understand the value of Drew Holiday, especially defensively, and another veteran leader. I do. I don't want to write that off and make it seem superfluous to what Portland's trying to build. But I do think if you can find a way to deal at least one of these guards, if not a couple of them, puts you in a much better place. As far as making sure you're finding the time for Morant and Lillard on the floor together, while still also keeping Lillard fresh and healthy. And I know a lot of people still are immediately going to Jaylen Brown. And, well, wait, you package Shaedon Sharpe and Drew Holiday to Boston with some draft picks, and there's your Jaylen Brown deal. I don't see that happening. I don't. It feels like we're getting farther and farther away from a Jaylen Brown deal every single day because the Celtics are simply asking for too much. Which is fine. Look, in my opinion, they never should have considered dealing Jaylen Brown in the first place. Even as a part of the Giannis deal, I had major questions about it. A possible Giannis deal. So, if I'm a Celtics fan, I'm fine with Brad Stevens going to Jaylen Brown, hat in hand, and saying, hey, bud, can we put this back together? We still love you, I swear. And handing him an extension later this summer that keeps him happy and keeps Brown and Tatum together for the long haul. So I don't think that the next domino to fall in Portland is Jaylen Brown. I tell you what makes a ton of sense. And we spent a good amount of time on Sunday on BetMGM Game Day here on Westwood One Sports. Kate Constable and myself, we spent a good amount of time talking about the complexion of things in Miami now. With Giannis and Bam together in the front court, it's fantastic. I mean, have fun getting to the rim. But they're desperate for some sort of option at guard. Who would fit that Heat culture more than a guy like Drew Holiday? Now, the cap ramifications of acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo means it's very difficult for Miami to bring in a nearly $35 million cap hit, which Drew Holiday still has. you're going to have to send out as many dollars as you bring in. But tell me if this sounds crazy. I know they just signed him to an extension, but I don't think that precludes them making a deal. Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins and somebody else with a $2 to $3 million cap hit lower on the roster, like a Pell Larson or something, I don't know. And some draft assets. Wiggins, a deep depth piece and a draft pick for Drew Holiday. Gives the Blazers a little bit more depth in the front court. You're not going to count on Wiggins to start unless there are injuries. It gets Miami the guard that they are just absolutely desperate for and would fit in well. And oh, by the way, now you have nowhere to go to score on Miami with Bam and Giannis down low and Drew Holiday on the perimeter. That seems like a very Miami thing to do. That seems like a very Pat Riley lurking in the shadows kind of thing to do. So if we're looking for the next domino to fall in Portland, obviously we know it comes from the glut of guards that they now have on the roster behind Lillard and Morant. And we know there's a very guard-needy team down in South Florida. It seems like I'm not trying to play matchmaker here, but I am. Like, listen, you guys are both in your early 40s and neither one of you is married. And you're both good people, but you have your flaws. So just please let me set you up on a date, okay? If it doesn't go well, hey, that's on me. But at the very least, let's try it. What else are you going to do? So yeah, I guess I am playing matchmaker in this case with Miami and Portland. But I think it makes a ton of sense. That's what this time of year is for, too. This time of year is for wild, rampant speculation about NBA deals that could be made, like LeBron to Golden State, Kawhi back to Toronto. Sometimes it's not wild and rampant. Sometimes there are many seeds of truth to these ideas. And with free agency starting at 6 Eastern today, you're going to get more of that. Because never before in any of the major professional sports that are capped, NBA, NFL, NHL, has it been more important to make deals because everybody's got the money to spend on retaining their own players. You're simply not getting the same elite names to free agency. You've seen it in the NHL offseason so far. You've got to make trades to get what you want or what you're looking for because you can't simply go out and just buy it on the free agent market because everyone's re-signing and trying to retain players. And then maybe you can pry them out of their hands via a deal. That's how things are going to go with the NBA offseason as well, as we've seen it start already in the last couple of days. That's what this time of year is for. Let's all play GM. Let's put together the trades. Let's talk about the NBA offseason. Unless you are Bill in Toronto. And who's Bill in Toronto, you ask? Oh, I'll tell you all about Bill in Toronto. I hope you're listening again today, Bill in Toronto, as we acknowledge you north of the border while also trying to figure out what Major League Baseball has done to our All-Star voting process. We will fill out our Major League Baseball All-Star ballots and acknowledge our friend Bill up north in the 6. That's all next here on Westwood One Sports.
to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Just a wild day at the World Cup yesterday, as both Germany and the Netherlands were eliminated. We'll talk to Anthony DeBundo about all of it. He's been covering the World Cup for The Ringer. That coming up in about 35 minutes or so. Today, you've got Ivory Coast, Norway at 1 o'clock. France, heavy favorites over Sweden at 5 Eastern. And Mexico, Ecuador tonight at 9 Eastern. 3 more round of 32 knockout matches in the World Cup today. You can get an early payout for a 2-goal lead. Place a pregame bet on any World's Game match, and if your team takes a 2-goal lead at any point in the game, your bet pays out as a win. The winnings, they're yours, regardless of the final outcome of the match. Download the BetMGM app today. Please gamble responsibly. So, Bill in Toronto, I mentioned before the break. Bill, hello. Hi. I hope you're listening today. 310-840-4910 if you are. 310-840-4910. Bill called in immediately following the show yesterday. Bill in the 6. And said, I don't want to hear about LeBron anymore. It's the middle of baseball season. Where's my baseball talk? We're going to fill out our All-Star ballot in just a second. But, Bill, this is for you. This segment, filling out our All-Star ballots, because your fan base in Toronto has ruined the All-Star ballots. It's your fault, Bill. You hear me? It's all on you, Bill. I'm making you the representative for the entirety of Blue Jays fandom, Bill. Bill in Toronto, the way Blue Jays fans stuffed the ballot box. And by the way, this is stupid. It really is, that we have these rounds of voting where at first you vote amongst everyone, all the players available, and then they whittle it down to 1 or 2 at each position. Yeah, literally 1. Like they've already told us, sorry, Ernie Clement's the starter at second base for the American League. Sorry, Shohei's the DH for the National League. No need to vote on those positions, guys. We decided them for you. But Blue Jays fans are the reason you have a Blue Jays player in the finalist position at every position for the American League. Alejandro Kirk is hitting 183 and is one of the 2 finalists for the AL catcher spot. Andre Jimenez is hitting 247 with a 667 OPS, one of the finalists at shortstop for the AL. Kazuma Okamoto, granted 19, 20 home runs, whatever he has, is hitting 236, a finalist at third base. Vladdy Guerrero has a sub-700 OPS and could barely get back out onto the field after having to use the bathroom in between innings last night. And he's one of the finalists at first base. So first and foremost, let's acknowledge that MLB made the process for All-Star voting stupid. Old man shaking fist at cloud. I want my little cardboard paper ballot, and I want to be able to punch out the holes while I'm sitting there in the morning before a Sunday afternoon game at the ballpark, listening to Mel Allen, watching it on the Jumbotron. This weekend, baseball, and Ozzie Smith is doing a backflip, all right? Child of the 80s. That's what I want. Sorry, I got that part out of the way. I can live with, I'm a millennial / Gen Xer, right on the cusp there between the two. I've learned how to use technology. I know how to vote online for the All-Star game. But look at the options you've given me. They're garbage, a lot of them. They are. So I did end up placing my votes for both leagues. In the American League, I had no choice but to take Ernie Clement, although he's actually deserving. He's the one Blue Jay who is actually deserving of a spot in the starting lineup for the American League. Shea Langoliers at catcher, Ben Rice at first base, Junior Caminero at third base, Bobby Witt at short. Fingers crossed he's healthy enough for the All-Star game and ready to go. Byron Buxton, Aaron Judge, and Mike Trout in the outfield. Speaking of healthy enough and ready to go, let's cross one of them off the list there. And Yordan Alvarez at DH. is hard to not. I have an old school philosophy about if you're leading the league in hitting, you should be an all-star regardless. Like if you're leading in homers, ribbies, or average, you should be an all-star. I don't know if it necessarily means that Yandy starts over Yordan Alvarez, though. I don't think it should. Anyway, National League. Drake Baldwin catcher, Matt Olson first, Ozzie Albies second. Thanks to the Braves fans for stuffing the ballot box as well. Max Muncy third, CJ Abrams short. Brandon Marsh, Andy Pages, and Juan Soto in the outfield. Ohtani's already plugged in as the DH. You can't even vote for someone else. That's who I voted for. Now, is that who I think should actually be the starters? No. You should have left it wide open, and there should be an element of actually picking the best players to this. So I put together my all-star starting lineups. Bill, I hope you're enjoying this. This is baseball talk, pal. Thanks for ruining the voting so Alejandro Kirk can maybe be a starting catcher hitting under 200. Go Jays. My actual starting lineups would go like this. Nick Kurtz at first for the AL. Ernie Clement at second. Junior Caminero at third. Those two, okay, yeah, I like those. Bobby Witt at short, again, big fan. Dylan Dingler from Detroit catching. And then I had Buxton, Trout, and Judge in the outfield, but I understand Judge isn't going to be ready for the All-Star game, most likely. If you had to find an alternate, I guess you'd go with Cody Bellinger. I could live with that. Alvarez is the DH, and Cam Schlittler would be my starting pitcher, who, by the way, goes tonight at home against the Tigers and Tarek Skubal. My National League All-Star starting lineup would look like this. Bryce Harper at first. You're all going to call me homers. I'm sorry. Brandon Lau at second. I mean, the man's just hitting dinger after dinger. He's on pace for like 110 RBIs. Max Muncy at third. The Dodgers' Max Muncy. Oh, by the way, did you hear Max Muncy played against Max Muncy last night? A block on Sportsnet. CJ Abrams at short, although an honorable mention to Otto Lopez for the Marlins. Again, if you're leading the league in hitting, you've got to be an all-star. But Abrams would be my starter. Hunter Goodman, who could hit 50 homers, thank you, Coors Field, for the Rockies this year, would be my catcher. And then Andy Pages in the outfield, along with Jordan Walker. And yes, I would have PCA in as an all-star. Kyle Schwarber would be my DH. And The Miz, nobody beats The Miz. Jacob Mizorowski would be my starting pitcher for the National League. Those would be my all-star starting lineups. I hope you agree with that, Bill. Can't help but notice you didn't pick up the phone and call today. Sorry. In all seriousness, thank you, Bill. We appreciate your passion for the game of baseball here on Westwood One Sports. We do. And we appreciate you reaching out to the show. But the next time we talk baseball, you better be on the horn, calling back and saying, hey, thanks, guys. I didn't want to hear about another LeBron offseason rumor. I appreciate you talking about Alejandro Kirk hitting 190. Sorry. The stuffing of the ballot boxes for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game has bothered me since I was a kid. It's just, it should be based on the numbers. It should be based on who the best players are. I've never understood how we just allow certain cities and teams to take over and put like 6 guys in the All-Star Game. Don't worry, though. Andres Gimenez that'll be great. Sorry, Bill. I didn't mean to take all that out on you. There's a little bit of everything just rolled up into my emotions there. Coming up in 20 minutes, we're going to talk everything World Cup with Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer, who's been covering the World Cup. Does this wide open World Cup mean a greater opportunity, maybe a perfect opportunity for the U.S. men's national team to actually win a World Cup? But next, we get into the trenches for our daily power ranking of NFL positional groups. It's time for the Hogs, the offensive line, next here on Westwood One Sports.
time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
What a day. It's going to be look, again, apologies to Bill in Toronto, who's a massive baseball fan. All right, I'm done yanking your chain, Bill. But in all seriousness, it's going to be a massive day for NBA stories. It just is. Free agency opens at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. The best place to be to stay on top of everything right here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Of course, you can always get us inside that Westwood One Sports app. Download it if you haven't yet. And also inside the Odyssey app, AUDACY, where you can also rewind. You know the podcasts are everywhere as well. And we're live across North America on Sirius XM channel 375. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. There was a move that had to be made in Detroit. The Lions releasing Terry and Arnold. Brendan Sorsby, we've got the ongoing saga there. Will he be allowed to play anywhere? We'll see. Brandon Ayuk, at least for 24 hours, it seems, has stopped running his mouth. We'll talk to Andrew Brandt about all of that 1 hour from now. He is the VP, or was the VP, of the Green Bay Packers for a decade. He is the executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova. He's got the Business of Sports podcast, his Sunday 7 newsletter, a new book, Smarter About Sports, out in 2 weeks, which you can pre-order on Amazon now. Just nobody better, really, to talk to about the business of sports, the legalities of sports, and everything that goes into it than Andrew Brandt. That's 1 hour from now. Brian Windhorst reporting that the Warriors are trying to get it done today. Getting LeBron James away from the Lakers. He's reporting that this morning. They've told Jimmy Butler they're not trading him. So how's this fit under the cap? What goes out to make LeBron's incoming salary work? I don't know. It still feels like the probability on this has fallen a great deal from where we were 24 hours ago. We'll get to that before 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Also, we got to talk a wild day at the World Cup yesterday. Germany and the Netherlands both eliminated 2 top 10 teams out in the round of 32. Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer, who's covering the World Cup, will join us in about 20 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. But we're going through a daily process here of getting ourselves ramped back up for football, because training camps open in like 3.5 weeks across most of the league, 3.5 to 4 weeks across most of the NFL. So we're going through and we are power ranking positional groups around the league day by day as I fill in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. We've gone through tight ends. We've gone through wide receivers. Yesterday, we went through secondaries. Today, enough of all the sexy positions. No, I want to get ugly. I want to get nasty. I want to get down in the mud with the hogs. I want to go in the trenches. So let's power rank the top 5 NFL offensive lines. As usual, I will open the floor to everybody else to tell me where I'm wrong and how I'm wrong after the fact. But let me start at number 5. And you're going to notice a common theme that comes together with most of these top 5 teams that I'm power ranking for the best offensive line groups. We'll get to what the common theme is in just a second, but we'll start with Buffalo at number 5. Look, James Cook is an incredibly talented running back. Josh Allen, an incredibly talented quarterback. You can give them as much credit as you want. They have the playmakers. But when you average 5 yards per carry on the ground, your offensive line is doing things very, very right. And the Bills' offensive line at times last year was just an absolute steamroller. Deion Dawkins anchoring the whole thing at left tackle. They bring all 5 back. I see no reason the Bills' offensive line won't once again be one of the best in the NFL. So I have them at number 5. Number 4, I might get some arguments on this one. But look, when you have, in my opinion anyway, the best tackle in the league on your roster, and the group of 5 returns completely intact, notice the theme here, you're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the league. The Tampa Bay Bucks. Tristan Wirfs at left tackle. A minuscule pressure percentage allowed by this man. And he's been able to do it on both sides of the line. But now protecting Baker Mayfield's blind side. Wirfs at left tackle. Everything else spins off of that. They've got talent across the line. And again, you're bringing back all 5 guys. Notice the theme. So, I've got Tampa number 4 as we rank the top 5 NFL offensive lines going into the 2026 season. Number 3 may also be up for debate because I think there are some serious question marks, but I'm counting on them getting back to form. Because Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnson were all hurt at some point last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. And they've had a messy breakup with O-line coach Jeff Stoutland. But if they are truly back to health, and I know this is an important caveat that may keep you from agreeing with me, but if this offense, the Eagles offense, really does commit to working more from under center and getting back to leaning on Saquon, if Sean Mannion can really keep Jalen Hurts from throwing too many monkey wrenches into this offense, trying to do too much of what he wants to do and not enough of what is best for the offense, which is letting this offensive line work, letting them get nasty, letting them get downhill, letting Saquon run. If they can do all that, I think there's a good chance the Eagles' offensive line gets back to looking like the group they were in 2024, which was the best in the league. But I got them at number 3 right now because of all those question marks I just brought up. Number 2, they allowed only 23 sacks on more than 600 dropbacks last year. 3.7% sack rate. They ran the ball on the ground at better than 4.5 yards a clip, 4.6 yards per carry, which was tied for 6th best in the league. And 4 of their 5 starters played at least 1,000 snaps at their position. Same 5 return this year. Plus, they've gone out and they've added quality depth. The Los Angeles Rams, my number 2 offensive line going into the 2026 season. David Quessenberry added as a swing tackle for depth there. 3rd rounder Keegan Trost out of Missouri added as interior depth. It was really tight for me between 1 and 2. I wasn't going to cop out and say it was a tie at number 1. So I did drop the Rams into the 2nd position. But it's such a thin margin between number 2 and number 1. But the Rams are number 2. And number 1, also just 23 sacks allowed last year, but on 650 dropbacks. That's even better than the Rams did. Just a 3.6% sack rate. And decent production on the ground. 4.4 yards per carry. Tied for 13th best in the league. And the whole line returns intact. Bowls to the left of me, Miners to the right. Here I am, Bo Nix with all kinds of time. The Denver Broncos at number 1. Steelers wheel, kids. Look it up. Go watch Reservoir Dogs tonight. So that is my power ranking of the 5 best offensive lines going into the 2026 NFL season. Buffalo Bills at number 5, Tampa Bay Bucks at number 4, Philadelphia Eagles at number 3, Rams at number 2, and the Denver Broncos at number 1. As always, I invite the crew to jump in and tell me where I may have gotten things wrong. I know it's offensive line, so there's much less to go on to argue about. It's not a sexy position. We're not talking about touchdown passes. We're not talking about miraculous catches or sacks or blitzes or pass rush win rate or anything like that. But, Bill, where do you come down on my power ranking of the top 5 offensive lines?
I mean, it's not bad, Chris. It's not bad.
That's not a good though. That's a not bad.
Well, you're missing a team here that like resurrected the career of a running back that nobody wanted, that turned around a quarterback who got sacked more than anybody else the year before last season. The line that had the protector of the year, the best offensive lineman in the entire league. Where are the Chicago Bears?
They're just off the list, Bill. They're just off the list.
Well, you should have put them just on the list.
On the list. I got to see it again. I got to see it again. All of these teams in the top 5, in my opinion anyway, have a clear track record now of multiple years of production and protection of their quarterbacks. So I get what you're saying. The Bears were close to the list. They're very close to the list, but they're not quite on it. And I know that hurts you deep inside. I know psychically it does damage.
You put the Bucks on there because they have one lineman.
Look, Tristan Wirfs is not just one lineman. Tristan Wirfs is an entire damn offensive line.
Damn it.
Tristan Wirfs is an offensive line. So, yeah, I put the Bucks on the list.
Why don't you put the Lions on there, too?
All right.
Penei Sewell.
All right. Pump your brakes. Grant jumped into the chat to say Eagles 1, Bears 2, Broncos 3, Rams 4, Bucks 5.
And keep in mind, Grant and I are totally objective and have no biases on this list.
No, none whatsoever, Bears fans that you are. Look, I could have put the Steelers on the list. Actually, I couldn't have. I didn't do that. So I avoided going Homer. Props to you and Grant for keeping the Chicago vibes alive. I shouldn't say that. It's not like the Bears don't have a very good offensive line. And look, they go out and make some additions too. I think I'm not going to back down though. I was going to grant you something for just I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Bill in Toronto got me all fired up earlier, and now I'm taking it out on Bill, the Bears fan. And so I apologize to all the Bills who I'm taking out my anger on today, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to back off the list. The Bears stay at number 6, okay? I'll give them number 6.
All right, I'll take 6, but I will give Bill in Toronto a shout-out because it did lead to you and I in the group text, just guys naming dudes with 1980s MLB All-Stars.
Oh, my God. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was peak time to be alive. Sitting at a ballpark before a game on a Sunday afternoon while they played This Week in Baseball on the Jumbotron, the dulcet tones of Mel Allen, Ozzie Smith doing backflips, and you're just sitting there punching out the names on your card like it's a Scantron sheet for a test in social studies.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like the pre-internet life post. That's the thing. The millennials and the younger Gen Xers have this like the pre-internet life that like people don't understand. And that's the thing. You talk about the Scantron sheets. I'm sure like Grant's looking at us as like, what the heck is these guys talking about? But yes, you couldn't vote anywhere but at the ballpark. You get your Scantron sheet, you punch it out. Like you'd grab like 5 and you do like in Chicago, you do one where you just put in like all the Cubs and all the White Sox and submit that one,
Yes.
And but yes. And then this is my real ballot and you put in your guys.
Yes.
Like, yeah, that's how you did it.
Oh, and ballot box stuffing was still possible. Like I was definitely guilty as a kid of grabbing a whole stack of those things and just punching them out the whole game. Just punching out Pittsburgh Pirate names or, like you said, doing the real ballot and punching out the guys that I thought should actually be on the roster. And that was the joy of filling out the MLB All-Star ballot. What they've done to it with the multiple rounds where we get it down to the finalists is just, I'll say it, it's a bastardization of the process. I know we could be much more worried about other democratic processes in this country, but I'm worried about All-Star voting, damn it.
Little Chris Mack voting for Tony Pena and Johnny
Oh,
Ray.
my God. You want to talk about, it's funny you bring up Tony Pena. I forget what brought it up, but I was talking to someone the other day. Oh, I know what it was. I was at the Riley Green concert on Friday night, and there was a guy there wearing a shirt that said, Sid Bream ruined my childhood. Now, if you remember the 1992 NLCS and the Braves beating the Pirates in Game 7, Sid Bream hobbling home as Barry Bonds lollipopped one in from left field. I walked up to this man who I did not know at all, and I said, I feel that shirt. And I said, that is the last time I physically sobbed over sports. Little Chris Mack laying on the living room of his grandmother's house, watching the end of the 1992 NLCS as Sid Bream, former Pirate of all people, slid in under Mike LaVallier's tag. I'm still convinced Spanky got him before he touched the plate and the foot came down. We'd replay the hell out of that one if we had it replay in 1992. But another moment that actually made me cry as a sports fan was the trade of Tony Pena in 1987. I know, I'm dating myself. But I remember, it was the only bright spot the 1987 Pirates had at the time, and they traded him away to the Cardinals for Andy Van Slyke, Mike LaValliere, and Mike Dunn. The fact that I remember all that is sad.
Now, Chris, do you know one other interesting fact about the Sid Bream play at the plate? What other historical significance that had?
I should know this, and I might, but go ahead, give it to me.
The first ever voice crack on national television of Sean McDonough when he goes safe when Sid Bream slides.
For the plate!
And yeah, if you're younger and you love the Sean McDonough voice cracks, go find it on YouTube. That is the first ever Sean McDonough voice crack on national television.
I'll be honest, Bill, for a long time, I held an unnatural resentment towards Sean McDonough because he called that play with such excitement. I've had a chance to talk to Sean in the intervening years as an adult and get over it because he's so damn good at his job, even with the voice cracks. But for a long time, I hated Sean McDonough because he called that play.
Oh, that is funny. It's a great call. It's one of the all-time great baseball plays.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome, Bill. My childhood died that night, October
Sid
of
Bream
1992.
slower than Tyler Morales in the 40.
Oh, shots fired, Tyler. I'll let you come back at that a little bit later. Andrew Brandt going to join us at the top of the hour to talk about the Terry and Arnold situation, Brendan Sorsby, Brandon Ayuk. Nobody better to talk to about the business of sports, especially the NFL, than Andrew Brandt. Coming up at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Also, has the plan died before it ever really got started? Or are they doubling down on making it happen? Bill in Toronto won't like it, but we'll talk about LeBron and the Warriors coming up in about 25 minutes. But coming up next, it was upset day at the World Cup as both Germany and the Netherlands were eliminated in penalty kicks. Is this wide open World Cup a good sign for the U.S. men's national team? We'll ask Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Santa Clara, tomorrow. Team USA against Bosnia in the round of 32. The knockouts have begun in the World Cup. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet. Two massive upsets yesterday. Germany and the Netherlands both knocked out. We'll catch up with Anthony DeBundo, who's covering the World Cup for The Ringer, in just a couple of minutes here. There are opportunities for other big upsets to happen today. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting small businesses with affordable coverage options. Get a quote today at progressivecommercial.com. 1 Eastern, we've got Ivory Coast against Norway. 5 Eastern, France against Sweden. France, massive favorites. And 9 Eastern, Mexico against one of the Cinderellas left in this thing, Ecuador. It feels wide open. At least that quadrant of the bracket that had Germany and the Netherlands in it, wide open. Brazil dodged a bullet yesterday against Japan, scoring what I think I heard is their latest stoppage time goal in team history to survive against Japan. But if you look at the bracket, all of a sudden, there's some soft spots in there. And with those soft spots, does it maybe make it more possible than ever? I'm not saying if you're an American soccer fan, you want to go all the way in a year where all the big dogs get knocked out. You'd like to prove it at some point, I would think, although a World Cup is a World Cup. A championship is a championship. But if someone were to take out Spain or Portugal for you before you get to the quarterfinals, I don't think you'd hate that. Because here's the other part. Again, I love bracket talk. Having some March Madness flashbacks. The other quadrant in that half of the bracket. So let's say the U.S. gets all the way to the quarterfinals, right? And let's say they get past Spain or Portugal, or don't even have to play Spain or Portugal. Either way, let's say the U.S. gets all the way to the semifinals. They would be playing a team in those semifinals from that Germany, Netherlands, Canadian, French part of the bracket. Now that, in all likelihood, would be France. But all of a sudden, Morocco beats Canada. Sweden has a massive upset later today. All of a sudden, the big dogs are dropping off. And the fewer big dogs you got to go through when you're being called one of the best versions of the U.S. men's national team, if not the best ever, by some very respected voices in the sport, this is where the expectations get raised. I said this yesterday. Right now, I think for the average American sports fan, it's still fun, right? Oh, we got through the group stage. Bosnia on Wednesday. Beat them on to the round of 16. Then it's Belgium or Senegal. Beat them, you're on to the quarterfinals. That's the point where it goes from, oh, this is fun. I don't watch a lot of soccer, but man, the U.S. is winning to, oh man, they're in the quarterfinals? That's as far as they've gone in modern history? Wow, we should probably expect them to keep going then. And this is where, if you're talented enough, the expectations get raised. The pressure is going to ramp up. How do they respond to that? We've already talked a lot about how the U.S. men's national team, at least to this point in the tournament, has played a very aggressive, I don't want to call it freewheeling, but very aggressive style, especially offensively. Do they keep doing that if they end up looking at a Spain or a Portugal in the quarterfinals? Do they trust their talent? Or do they say, nah, against that level of talent, we got to switch things up, play a little differently, drop back a little bit more, get a little more conservative, focus on the defensive end? Again, pressure will change how that goes. But the expectations are legit, and the expectations are very real if the U.S. men's national team should get to the quarterfinals. When Jurgen Klopp is saying it's the best version of this team ever, when Eric Winalda is saying you can get to the semifinals. And just think of what that would do. I mean, you already see European stars coming over to North America to play in MLS. What would that do? Would that make the product even more attractive to the average everyday American sports fan? And if so, does that mean more viewers and therefore more money and more opportunity for North American teams to bring in those stars that traditionally play over in Europe and maybe get them before the tail end of their careers? There's a lot that ties into the U.S. team maybe paying off on some expectations that have built through the group stage and now are laid out in front of us over the next couple of weeks. But yesterday, it was all about the upsets. He's been covering the World Cup for The Ringer. Anthony Dabbundo joins us now here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Morning, Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing well. What a day of the World Cup we had yesterday, huh?
Just wild. Absolutely wild. I want to start with the early one where Brazil gets away from Japan with the goal in extra time, the latest goal they've ever scored in extra time, I think I read, in World Cup history, and survives. Between what we saw there with Japan pushing Brazil to the brink and the two upsets, do you get the sense that this is as wide open a World Cup as maybe we've ever seen?
I do, and I felt that way coming in. You know, even after the group stage, people are asking me like, "Oh, who do you think is the favorite?" And honestly, I could poke pretty significant holes in just about every team in this field. And I said Argentina because they have the easiest path now. With the way that it's broken for them the first couple rounds, they're less likely to run into roadblocks. But yeah, I mean, Paraguay, a team that the U.S. throttled, a team that then turned it around and had two better games, but only really had one quote-unquote normal game at this World Cup, then goes and beats Germany, right? So I think that because we have weaker favorites who are struggling to consistently break down organized defensive teams, that was one of the stories of the group stage, you're just more likely to get these kind of games that end up in penalties, that end up in these crazy variants. We flip a coin and we see who advances kind of things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, that you're obviously presented with the option in extra time. Do you want to continue to aggressively pursue offensive chances, or do you want to sit back, prevent mistakes, and try to get it to kicks? And Zlatan Ibrahimovic last night on the Fox postgame show went off on the Netherlands for not playing to their personality and basically abandoning any attempts at offense in extra time. I think that ties back in to some of what I was saying just before you jumped on. When the pressure gets ramped up, managers and teams have a tendency to tighten up and play more conservatively. I'm going to tie this back into the U.S. men's national team, a team that has played pretty aggressively. I wouldn't, I said a couple seconds ago, I wouldn't use the term freewheeling, but they've played very aggressively, especially through the middle of the field. If they get to a point where they're staring down a big boy in the quarterfinals in particular, and we're talking about Spain or Portugal, incredibly talented teams, do you think their personality changes, or do they just continue to do what they've done to get to that point?
One thing I'll say is that I was disappointed in the Dutch from minute one, honestly, from when the lineup was announced. In the way that they went about that game yesterday, they changed their approach from the group stage to the knockouts, put more defenders on, less midfielders, less attackers, and kind of set the tone for what ended up being a very underwhelming total attacking performance. They had basically no chances. So I was disappointed in the Dutch. Not that surprised, though, given what we've seen from Ronald Koeman over the years. As far as the Americans go, in some ways, that's what's been so likable about this team so far is the way that they have pressed, the way that they have hunted the ball. And I think that is the form of soccer that gets people excited, right? You lose the ball, go win it back. And we didn't see that from the Dutch last night either. I mean, the Dutch were just kind of standing there, waiting for the mistake, waiting for the opportunity to win back possession. They were not forcing any issues. They were not pressing. They were not turning over Morocco. The U.S., only Spain, produced more high pressures and turnovers than the United States in the group stage. Spain, and it was us, Uruguay, and Germany, right? Those were the top pressing teams at this tournament. So I think it's worth giving them credit for that and saying that that is an identity that is a staple of Pochettino teams. It's been true when he managed at the club level, and it's been true when he's managed the U.S. So I would put the expectation on them to continue to do that no matter who they're playing, or who's on the pitch. And obviously, it will be much harder to do against Spain and against Portugal. But this team does have the talent to play as kind of like a mid-block and counter and break and transition team because they have so many players who are great in space, not as many players who are good trying to break down low blocks.
Anthony DeBundo covering the 2026 World Cup for the Ringer with us here on Westwood One Sports. I want to go back to what you mentioned about Paraguay. After getting whooped by the U.S. in the opening match of the group stage, they upset one of the world powers yesterday. How do we translate that to what the U.S. team may be capable of?
It's a good question, honestly, and I think it's one of the ones that defines this tournament because if you have an organized defensive block and at the international level, you are just very hard to beat. We watched this with Morocco at the last World Cup. Now, Morocco's a little bit different at this World Cup. They are more expansive, more open, more willing to take risks, but Paraguay, the scouting report on them didn't change between match 1 and match 4, right? They did the same thing to Germany they did to the United States. It just didn't work. And some of that is, variance, right? Like an own goal going in the 7th minute helps the United States in quite a way that they didn't have happen to Germany, right? Germany had to play from behind for most of that game or was even. So then the game state does matter. But how do you break down a low block? You can go around a low block. The U.S. proved that with Serginho Dest and with Jedi Robinson creating chances and getting in behind defenses to the byline, getting those cutbacks. The Germans couldn't do that. Why? They have no wingers. Their wingers were terrible. Leroy Sané was poor yesterday. That's their problem. You can go through a low block, and teams have long tried to do that. The Americans have long struggled to do that. But with McKennie and Tillman making those runs in behind, they were able to go over and create chances that way. Germans were not getting those midfield runs either. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about trying to break down low blocks. And at the end of the day, the Americans had more ideas than the Germans. The Americans had better execution than the Germans. That is something that in the long history of this sport has basically never been true. And I think that speaks volumes to what Pochettino has done, to what this personnel has done, and to the fact that the U.S. is actually a pretty well-balanced team for the most part, whereas Germany, they have a lot of squad holes.
Let me get back to what I mentioned about Brazil just barely skating past Japan yesterday. They move on to face the winner of the early match today, Ivory Coast and Norway. And Erling Haaland has been, I think, everything we would expect him to be for Norway. So is that enough to push past Brazil, especially given what we may have seen from Brazil yesterday? Can Norway not just beat Ivory Coast, but can they go on to beat Brazil?
I think both teams in today's game will feel like they can give Brazil a run. Both teams have some flaws, but both teams are very effective at attacking in transition. And I was really impressed with Ivory Coast's performance against Germany. Now, maybe that performance doesn't carry as much weight after what we saw yesterday, but I thought, even match 1 to match 2, Ivory Coast was a different team. They approached Ecuador differently than they approached Germany. They had different personnel for the situation, for the task at hand, and they put in 2 really good performances back to back. and won and got, beat on the literal last kick of the game by the Germans. So you feel good about Ivory Coast, and I do feel good about their chances in this match. Norway, I think their biggest flaw, and something that will get exposed and already has a little bit, is going to be that they are wide defenders, are pretty underwhelming, and I think they really struggle to stop crosses from coming into the penalty area. And against Vinny Jr., who is one of the best 2 or 3 wide players at this tournament, it's going to be a real challenge for them to defend Brazil. However, you can look at Brazil yesterday. The first half, I thought they really struggled to contain Japanese transition. I thought they really struggled to apply consistent pressure. And without Rafinha, you're just looking at a forward line that's just Vinny and a lot of guys, and guys who are okay but not special. And I think that makes Brazil a little bit vulnerable. I think Casemiro has had great moments in this tournament so far, but he's also had some really bad ones. So this Brazil team is just not as talented as ones in the past. So I think both Ivory Coast and Norway will say, hey, we saw what Japan did. We saw that Japan got the lead. They sat a little bit too deep. They invited a little bit too much pressure, and they paid the price for that. Both Ivory Coast and Norway have much more attacking firepower, and I think are better teams than Japan at this tournament.
Anthony DeBundo, the Ringer, covering the World Cup, joining us here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. The other 2 matches today, France, Sweden. France heavy favorites over the Swedes, still the favorites to win the World Cup as well. And then Mexico, Ecuador. Which of those 2 has the best chance of giving us an upset?
Certainly Mexico and Ecuador. We talked about the blueprint for teams that pull off upsets this tournament, and it's organized defensive blocks going up against teams that don't really have a ton of answers for that. Now, France can be frustrating. They can put together performances that they look like they've never played together before and that they're just a little disjointed. But Sweden, to me, has a similar problem to Norway. And honestly, if you go watch what the Dutch did to Sweden, I think it could be similar in this matchup, where the Dutch could not stop, or the Dutch just got the ball out wide, got crossed into the box, got cutbacks to the byline, and then just had open season on this Swedish defense. And I think France could do similar things. I think the Swedish defense is pretty vulnerable to the same things that Norway's defense is, and France just put 4 on them. Granted, it was the B team. So I don't see it for Sweden. If you get into a shootout with France, you will lose. So that's not a fun way to play. However, with Ecuador, look, this is the best individual defensive playmaking group at the tournament. I stand by that. They are very capable of playing a lot of different defensive styles, and they're able to be aggressive and to press and to try to win the ball because they know they have 3 all-star, world-class defenders individually at the back, Pacho and Caicedo especially from PSG and Chelsea, who are just so good at winning the ball off of opponents when they get opportunities to run at them. And honestly, this Mexico-Ecuador game, I don't think it's going to be the most exciting watch. I think it'll be physical. I think it'll be a war. It'll be somewhat similar to the Netherlands and Morocco in that way. But Mexico is a very safe possession team, and Ecuador is a very elite defensive team. Those 2 combinations likely lead to a bit of a stalemate. You never know, right? Set piece goal here, fluke here, mistake there. Games can change. But in terms of just the general flow of this match, I do think it presents a bit of a toss-up vibe. Mexico's at home. That's why they're favored. But I don't really think there's much of a gap between the 2 teams in terms of actual quality.
I was talking earlier, Anthony, and brought it up yesterday as well. The U.S. Has been lauded by some. Jurgen Klopp is saying it's the best U.S. men's national team he's ever seen. Eric Winaldo was on here with us last week saying he thinks they can go to the semis. Now, the obstacle there would be looming in the quarterfinals, presumably Spain or Portugal, 2 of the 7 teams that have better odds than the U.S. to win the whole thing. But just from a 50,000-foot view, in your opinion, what should the expectations for this team be, and how much could they change over the next week and a half if they do find themselves in the quarterfinals against one of those 2 heavyweights?
I wouldn't be too afraid of a Portugal quarterfinal right now. And I think that's something that a month ago I wouldn't have said. But at that point, I want American fans to understand that it's not just about did you make the quarters or did you make the semis or did you make the round of 16? And I think that's why when we look at the path and stuff, right? Ultimately, we want to see the U.S. go up against these better teams. We want to see what happens when the U.S. plays Belgium. We want to see what happens when the U.S. plays against a team at that level. Because if they just go, let's pretend they had gotten the really easy path and they played, Bosnia and then Egypt or or a weaker third place team in the round of 16. They won those 2 games and they went and lost 3-0 to Spain. What would we have learned? We'd be like, wow, the U.S. made the quarterfinals of the World Cup. And then they got pasted by the first good team that they really played in the tournament. Whereas if they go and they lose a hard-fought game to Belgium where it comes down to penalties, or if they lose in the quarterfinals to Spain because Lamine Yamal does something ridiculous and they lose 2-1, you'll feel better about that than you will if the team makes the semis and doesn't play anybody, right? If somehow Spain loses and they're playing Croatia in the quarters, right? No disrespect to them, but like a clear class below. So I think it can't just be we set this line and this round makes it a success, and if they don't make this round, then it's not good enough. I mean, the most iconic performances at a World Cup in U.S. history, I think a lot of people think of, Tim Howard against Belgium. They got pasted in that game, but they were in it because Tim Howard was so good. They think about Dos Cero in 2002 against Mexico. They got to play Mexico in the round of 16. They had a huge win, right? So I think it's about the moment. It's not just about like which round did you make or how far did you go that will determine this. And so like if they're in the quarterfinals against Spain, they lose a close game, I'm not going to be like, well, what a disappointment. I'm going to say, damn right, they did pretty well this tournament. So I think it's going to be coming down to like how they perform against a team that is considered at or above their talent level, and that hasn't happened yet. So we'll see.
Anthony, great stuff. Appreciate all the insight. Look forward to catching up with you again later in the tournament if we get time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, Anthony DeBundo covering the World Cup for The Ringer. That is a great point he makes about, it's not just the finish line, it's how you got there and who you beat to get there. And I think that's more than acceptable if you get to the quarterfinals and you lose to Spain. Okay, you're not happy about losing, but you understand that given the opponent, if you put up a fight, it's a step forward for the U.S. men's national team. Top of the hour, we'll talk to Andrew Brandt about the business of sports, in particular the NFL, Brandon Ayuk, Brendan Sorsby, Terry and Arnold. Coming up next, has the plan died before it even started, or are they doubling down on it in Golden State? That's next on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
3 more big ones today. Ivory Coast, Norway, France, Sweden, Mexico, Ecuador. Thanks to Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer for joining us to talk about the World Cup. You can get an early payout for a 2-goal lead by placing a pregame bet on any World's Game match. If your team takes a 2-goal lead at any point in the game, your bet pays out as a win, and those winnings are yours, regardless of the final outcome of the match. Download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. So I'm convinced that we were getting just a little played. Just a little, not on purpose by the media people like Shams Charania, but maybe by the people who feed them information. Doesn't sound like the Washington Wizards have any interest at all in dealing Anthony Davis to the Golden State Warriors. And the re-signing of Kristaps Porzingis is going to make things really difficult, because who knows what a Draymond Green deal looks like too. Going to make it really difficult for Golden State to fit LeBron James in under the cap. I'm starting to wonder if we all just got played for LeBron to try and create some leverage with the Lakers. But if you're the Lakers, you're frying bigger fish right now. You're worried about figuring things out at the rim, finding a big man. You're not letting LeBron play you for leverage. Much less probable, even if it's still possible, for LeBron to end up in Golden State. Terry and Arnold, Brendan Sorsby, Brandon Ayuk, a lot to break down with one of the best in the game when it comes to talking the business of sports. Andrew Brandt joins us next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Let's go. It's the Power Hour, the final hour of the show here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. Coming up in about 20 minutes. I don't know. Bill and I may just take over the show and just name random dudes. Just guys naming dudes. Because I had fun doing that earlier when we were talking about old school voting on the Major League Baseball All-Star Game and how I think the whole thing's been bastardized. But yeah, here nor there. I'm done yelling at Bill in Toronto about yelling at us for talking too much about LeBron. Maybe we'll get to LeBron here. I want to focus, though, on some NFL issues first with one of the best in the business about talking about the business of sports. He was the VP of the Green Bay Packers for a decade. He is currently the executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova. Check out his Business of Sports podcast. He's got a great newsletter every week, the Sunday 7, and he's got a brand new book coming out, Smarter About Sports. 2 weeks from today, July 14th, that you can pre-order on Amazon right now. The great Andrew Brandt joins us here on Westwood One Sports. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Chris. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time because there's a lot of different issues going on, not just in the NFL, but obviously with NBA free agency getting set to take off at 6 Eastern today. But I want to start in the NFL where you've got a wealth of high-level experience. And I want to start with the Terrion Arnold case. The Lions released him officially yesterday. Just judging by the cursory amount that I've read about this, it struck me, and my knee-jerk reaction, and really it continues to be my reaction even after processing some of this, is that I'll never be able to wrap my brain around guys who still, for some reason, feel the need to, I don't know, attach themselves to the ethos of respect, disrespect, like they're Tony Soprano sitting in the office at the Bada Bing with their crew. Like I have not and will not ever be able to attach myself to that mentality. Just how bad will this get for Terrion Arnold? I've heard the possibility of life in prison exists.
Yeah, well, it's a tough one because I'm not, skilled enough to comment on the criminal nature of whatever he faces beyond. But on the football side of it, this was clearly one of those where I'm sure when the Lions found out exactly what we've found out so far, they probably sat in their offices and says, there's no way in God's green earth this guy can be on our team again. It's just beyond repair. And my saying, greater talent for greater tolerance.
Yeah.
But even the most talent is not going to allow for this kind of tolerance. And they looked at it from the business point of view, too. You have 2 years left on a rookie contract. It's a full guarantee. But as far as that full guarantee, I'm sure the lawyers are involved saying, hey, I'm not sure this full guarantee is going to be remaining after what is going to happen to him. So they may be scot-free from that contract beyond whatever cap charges that are going to come. It's what you suggest is sort of a lesson in scouting. I know Nick Saban wrote a letter on his behalf, but come on. I mean, there has to be some inkling of this kind of potential behavior. And teams will allow for a lot. We've seen Rashee Rice this offseason. He's still on the team, but this is a level beyond that.
Yeah, the Terrion Arnold dead cap hit just $3.9 million this year. So in the world of the ever-expanding NFL salary cap, a drop in the bucket, relatively speaking. For the Lions, I mean, it wasn't a great secondary to begin with, Andrew. And now they've got to find a way to try and, I guess, backfill this spot with training camp less than or about a month away. When you're in a front office and something like this comes down, you get the phone call. How much is it a scramble to find or figure out how you're going to, like I said, backfill that spot? And how much of it is, no, you know what? Not that we ever planned for something like this to happen, but we've got the whiteboard, we've got the depth chart, and we know exactly what directions we can go with this.
Yeah, obviously it's not a strength of theirs. It hasn't been a strength of theirs for a couple of years, and they continue to invest resources like they did with Arnold, the first round pick. That's some serious resources. So that's a failure. And it's a failure in scouting, not because of talent, but because of what behavior has taken over that talent. Yeah, as you mentioned, every team has a whiteboard. Every team has a ready list. So the ready list is there for injury, and it looks like it's there for this kind of thing too. So they'll go down their ready list in terms of who's next, but it has to be someone, of course, not on an NFL roster unless they want to make a trade. But this tells me they'll be active in training camp and certainly scouring those cornerbacks during training camp to see if they rate them higher than the group that they have. So we'll see a lot of activity in August for the Lions secondary.
Andrew Brandt with us here on Westwood One Sports. He's the executive director of the study for sports law at Villanova. Check out his Business of Sports podcast and make sure you subscribe to the Sunday 7 newsletter as well. The new book, Smarter About Sports, is out in 2 weeks that you can pre-order on Amazon right now. Let me pivot to the Brandon Ayuk situation, because this is another one I can't wrap my brain around, Andrew. Brandon Ayuk, if he would have handled this out of the public eye, may still be in a spot where there was some, even if it was minuscule, some level of interest in him outside of San Francisco. But in the way he's handled this, he's completely demolished any market for his services. And I understand John Lynch's point of view as well. I'm not going to just release you and let you walk off to your preferred destination. How, if at all, does this get resolved?
Well, there's a lot of business of sports aspects with this player. 2 years ago, he leveraged a hold in to get a major contract. I was shocked by that contract. I think it was 4 years, 120. And he did it by just being a pain in the you-know-what in training camp, basically, and they succumbed to him. And then he had whatever he had, an injury, and he really hasn't played. The bottom line, the way I look at it, is this kid made $50 million for 25 catches for 7 games. So what a Business of Sports Hall of Famer he is. He made $50 million for 7 games. And now you're right. I mean, the 49ers owe him no money until the season starts. So they're squatting on his rights. And if they get some kind of offer beyond a late 7th round pick in a couple of years, probably they'll move him, but I don't think they will. So maybe they just wait until training camp and release him. Maybe they hope against hope somebody will offer something. On the other side of it, he's referenced the Commanders a few times because he's close to Jaden Daniels, but I can't, if you're the Commanders, you want any part of that? I mean, I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, the conversations in an NFL front office, which you've been privy to, I have to be, I would think, pretty blunt and pretty straightforward about, yeah, we understand we have a need for more in our receiver room, but this just isn't worth it.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure, everything's related to me to trade and money. So if they have to give up anything for him, probably not. If they have to give up a real contract for him, probably not. But if they're getting him for free or a 7th round pick 3 years from now, and it's a minimum contract, yeah, maybe you do take a flyer. Sure, he's got talent. But this is all related to whether it's the Commanders or any team, what you're giving up, if anything, in the trade and what your risk is on the contract.
Andrew Brandt with us here on Westwood One Sports. The new book, Smarter About Sports, is out on July 14th. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now. Sign up for that Sunday 7 newsletter and check out the Business of Sports podcast as well. The Brendan Sorsby situation is just sitting there. The CFL, although it doesn't sound like, according to the reporting, Sorsby had approached the CFL. The CFL has said, thanks, but no thanks. We're not interested in employing you. While the UFL has made some overtures, but their season is over already. What is the best path forward for Sorsby at this point?
Well, the best path might be the only path, which is prepare for the NFL draft in 2027. And you mentioned that I run a sports law program. I would imagine my syllabus next semester is going to be at least 2 weeks of Brendan Sorsby. He's had so much litigation in the past 2 months. And Texas Tech supported him, but when Texas Tech saw the writing on the wall, they encouraged him to go to the pros, and then the pros don't want him. Neither the NFL, CFL. This has happened before with different circumstances. During COVID, you had players like Micah Parsons and others sort of sit out and prepare for the draft. You've had players that have played a few games and realize their value is not getting any greater and sit out and prepare for the draft. You obviously had players miss bowl games. So this is kind of an extension of that brought on by circumstances. So I think he goes to one of these training centers that agents have out there, and that's his job the next 6 months, 8 months, just getting ready for the 2027 draft where he'll be a very high pick. I don't see any other options.
It's different. It's not apples to apples. It's a different set of circumstances, but it reminds me a good bit, Andrew, of when Terrell Pryor came out of Ohio State. He faced discipline from the NFL for transgressions in Columbus. With that precedent laid out, is there a case to be made for the NFL levying some sort of supplemental discipline on Sorsby when he finally does get drafted and signed with somebody?
I think the year removed, you never know, but I think the year removed might be punishment enough. I actually thought he would be allowed in with a significant penalty, way beyond what Pryor got, maybe 10, 11, 12 games, because of the nature of betting and how taboo it is and how we've seen precedent of Calvin Ridley getting a whole year for betting. But alas, he's not getting in at all. And I think they termed it as, hey, you can't just come to the NFL because college suspended you. You can't just sort of say, okay, I'll come to the NFL. There has to be better reasoning, better contrition, better resolve than that. And Sorsby's attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, has talked about fighting this, but I just haven't seen anything yet. And I'm not sure we will. I don't think that may be the end of the line for Sorsby and all his lawyers.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Andrew, what is the basis for any sort of case his representatives would bring against the NFL to try and grant him some relief to enter the league somehow later this year?
Well, the basis would be, I don't think there's ever been a denial of a supplemental draft when someone's applied to be in the supplemental draft. And that's a basis, saying that it's arbitrary, it's punitive to one person. On the other hand, you go to the letter of the law, and the letter of the law is the CBA, which says the NFL may choose to hold a supplemental draft. That's pretty clear. May choose or may not choose. So I think maybe Jeffrey Kessler has given it up after seeing that. Maybe not. Maybe there's more to come. But it'd be hard for a supplemental draft to be scheduled now when they decided not to schedule it. Although I guess it's not too late. One theory I had was maybe the NFL was basically giving an opening offer that we don't want you to play any games. And with enough rattling by the lawyers, they agree to some kind of long suspension. We'll see.
What is the NFLPA's role in this, being that he's not a member of the Players Association yet, but, I mean, there's a good chance he'll be a future member of the NFL Players Association. Would they step in on Sorsby's behalf here at all in order to keep a precedent from being set against future NFL players, or do they just throw their hands up and back away from this situation and say, sorry, that's between you and the league?
I think that's what they've sort of hinted at doing. We haven't seen any comments supporting Sorsby. What we've seen, and I've covered a lot of collective bargaining negotiations, is that the people thrown under the bus by the union have always been the rookies. The rookie pay scale has been drastically reduced over and over again, not just the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, in order to keep more money for the veterans. And that seems to be a theme. So the people running the NFLPA are veterans. And I'm not sure they want to make any sacrifices for a rookie, especially one not in the union, not yet drafted, not yet signed as an undrafted player, not yet eligible. He's not an eligible player to be drafted. So I doubt the NFLPA is going to get involved here.
He was the VP of the Packers for a decade. He's the executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova. Andrew Brandt with us here on Westwood One Sports. I wanted to pivot to the NBA for just a second, Andrew, because in that Sunday 7 newsletter that I mentioned, you had a bit in there about the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade to Miami. What's your insight on that and what it does to Miami's salary cap, but also what it does for Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Giannis, obviously, with my roots in Wisconsin and seeing what he's done for that community. But I just think sometimes we get over our skis talking about these superstar trades where you have to sort of drill down and say, wait a minute, he's past his supposed prime, so he's 31, hasn't really participated in the playoffs for several years, had a lot of injuries, and has really reduced the options for the Heat, not only in draft picks and supporting players, but also with salary cap. So a lot of people sort of look at these trades as slam dunk for the team that gets the superstar. I kind of look at it as a win for the Bucks to get young talent, to get shooting with Hero, to get defense with a couple other players, to get last year's number one, this year's number one, another number one, future number ones. So we'll see. Maybe short term, you're going to look at it and say, wow, the Heat are really good, but this trade has to be evaluated over years and years. So I'm not sure it's the great deal for Miami that a lot of people think.
Before I let you run, Andrew, I got to ask, the new book is out in exactly 2 weeks. People can pre-order it now on Amazon. It's called Smarter About Sports. I can imagine some of the stories that are in this book from your time in the business, but what new insight do you have to share with us in Smarter About Sports when it's out?
I appreciate that. It's a book about my career, but sort of instructional for anyone who wants to know behind the scenes in sports or learn about working in sports or hope to work in sports, all the thousands of young people that want to do that. I think there are books out there by agents. There are books out there by team executives. There are books out there by people in the media. There are books out there about NIL now. And this combines them all. This gives you a look into all sides of the business in one book, using hundreds of stories throughout my career to illustrate it. I think the best way and the way I teach is to illustrate through stories, not theory, but practical life experience. So that's what it does, and I encourage everyone who's interested to get it or get it for a friend or a family member. And pre-order is available now on Amazon, as you said, and it's out on shelves in 2 weeks.
Looking forward to checking it out. Perfect for when I'm sitting on the beach in a few weeks, looking for something to read. Can't wait to check out the Smarter About Sports book from Andrew Brandt that is out in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. Really appreciate all your insight on all of these issues. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We'll hope to catch up soon.
Same to you, Chris. Enjoy being on with you.
Thank you very much. Andrew Brandt, as mentioned, the VP of the Packers for a decade, a long career in sports, particularly revolving around sports business and sports law. Now the executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova, the Business of Sports podcast, the Sunday 7 newsletter, and Smarter About Sports is out in 2 weeks, including a story about when he represented Ricky Williams and Ricky left to be represented by Master P. I'm guessing how we know how that story ends. What I'm more interested in is the twists and the turns and the path that took Ricky in that direction, and to get the perspective of Andrew. Coming up next, it's a wide open World Cup. Is that a good thing for the U.S. men's national team? And is one thing dying on the vine before it even got started, or could we have it done by the end of the day, as one person is reporting someone's trying to do? Get it done by the end of the day. That's all next right here on Westwood One Sports.
Havertz. It's coming. It's now. And it's saved. Orlando Hill stops it.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Moroccan goaltender Yassine Bounou, Defensive Player of the Week, sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union, proudly serving all branches of the armed services, veterans, and their families. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission, the call on Fox of that was the most incredible part of last night's penalty kicks between Morocco and the Netherlands. Not the multiple posts or crossbars that were hit, but that save on Crescencio Somerville by Bono. He knew exactly where it was going. A lot of people say these PKs are just straight luck because you got to guess. There is a ton of scouting and practice that goes into PKs for these international teams, especially at this level. And he knew exactly where he needed to be. And it was right in the right spot. And what was crazy was I went into it after watching extra time last night. I was like, man, this is going to go to penalty kicks. Same thing Laura, our board op, said in the chat. Man, I hate PKs. This sucks. Somebody score a real goal. But then the PKs were the most exciting part of the match, to be honest. And you hear Zlatan and Thierry Henry and the entire panel, Alexi Lawless, talk about how much work goes into penalty kicks. And you go, okay, it's not just luck. There's so much work that goes into how penalty kicks are going to be handled, especially at the international level. Although I'll be honest, if the U.S. ends up getting to a point where they get eliminated by penalty kicks, I'm going to go right back to hating them. And I reserve that right to do so. Is this wide open World Cup good for the U.S. men's national team? I think it is. I think it's a sign that we'll see how, look, France may just absolutely stomp Sweden today and assert themselves as the team to beat in this thing. Messi may go out and score another pair of goals when Argentina has their round of 32 match and remind us that those two are the clear-cut cream of the crop in this tournament, France and Argentina. But when we were talking to Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer earlier, who's covering the World Cup for them, he made a really good point. Like, if the U.S. were to maybe get a Portugal matchup in the quarterfinals, I don't think that's as scary now as it was before the tournament started. Not just because Cristiano Ronaldo looks like a shell of himself, but because the U.S. has looked, I think, a whole lot better and a whole lot more aggressive than any of us expected them to. And that aggressive style of play could be enough to get them all the way through to the semifinals. Man, if that happens, even people who aren't sports fans, like the average sports fan, I think, is going to be glued to any U.S. match from here on out. But even the average American is going to be glued to the U.S. matches throughout the rest of this thing. From the YouTube chat, and you can jump into the conversation there as well. YouTube.com/@TheKostos, TheKostos. As we're live here on Westwood One Sports, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Anathema, a.k.a. Buddha, on the YouTube chat. People forget this is not just a USA World Cup, it's North America. Mexico and Canada also host nations. I think Mexico has the same incentive as the USA. I think the incentive is there for everybody. I think the added pressure is there for the host nations when they get in positions in front of their home crowds to move on, obviously. But I do think every match, I know last night was the last one in Monterey. I think most matches from here on out are taking place, like Mexico plays at home today in Mexico City. Once we get beyond the round of 32, there are few matches in Mexico and Canada. I'm going to scroll through the schedule right now just to make sure I'm not talking out of my rear end. There's one between Portugal and Croatia in Toronto. There's another round of 16 match in Mexico City. Another round of 16 match in Vancouver. Yeah, so there's still a few left in Canada and Mexico. And we talk about the pressure on the teams that are supposed to be the big boys, the powerhouses of this tournament. The pressure is on them, especially when they get to extra time and penalty kicks. How do they react to that? Netherlands didn't react well to the pressure last night. But it is a good point about how the host nations react to the pressure on them to advance, regardless of whether it's just Team USA, Canada and Mexico included, when they're faced with those opportunities in front of their home fans. I want to go back to something that we talked about for just a couple minutes ago, or for just a couple of minutes, about a half hour ago, pardon me. And that's the idea of the LeBron to Golden State thing. And I don't want to beat the horse. It's already dead. I know. If it happens, we'll see it happen. Brian Windhorst reporting this morning on ESPN that the Warriors are going to try and get it done today. Free agency hits at 6 Eastern in the NBA. But with how fast and how hard we saw that story hit, now about 36 hours ago, that LeBron and Anthony Davis may head to Golden State, it's been something to see now the dial back on that, the backpedal. Not away from necessarily LeBron to Golden State, but everything around the Wizards has basically been, yeah, we're good. We're counting on AD to be a part of this thing that we're starting to rebuild here, at least for the time being. We're not dealing him to Golden State. What's Golden State going to be able to give us? Also, with the Warriors re-signing Kristaps Porzingis, they've got to work out a deal with Draymond Green. It's much less probable than it was 24 hours ago that LeBron ends up in Golden State. And even if it does end up happening, I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's much less probable than it was yesterday at this time. I think what we can read out of it is that the very media-savvy LeBron James understood, maybe his people understood, hey, if we can get this out there, we can try to get the ball of momentum rolling downhill. And maybe, even if it doesn't end up happening, we light just a little bit of a fire underneath the Lakers' rear ends in being interested in bringing you back. But what I love is that the only Lakers-related story we've gotten in the last 24 hours has nothing to do with LeBron. It's the Lakers are talking to Jalen Duren. And this is something I brought up a week ago on BetMGM Game Day, which is every Sunday afternoon here on Westwood One Sports. I brought up the idea of Duren to LA. And according to Dave McMenamin's reporting at ESPN, Luka Doncic has told the Lakers front office they need a, quote, A-list center. And you can make all the arguments you want to, and they're fair about Duren's performance in the playoffs. That should be the priority for the Lakers right now. not appeasing LeBron James. It should be taking care of their interior. Getting a lob threat for Luka, which Duren is. And the Lakers, by letting that get out, clearly have no interest in playing LeBron's game. Oh, you want to play the media game? Okay. You're not going to hear anything about LeBron from us. Let's talk about what else we're doing. So LeBron tried to play the Golden State situation for a little bit of leverage. This is all my theory. LeBron tried to play the Golden State situation for a little bit of leverage with the Lakers because he'd probably rather just stay in LA. And instead, the Lakers pulled a classic, I don't think about you at all. John Hamm, Mad Men. Look it up, kids. Great show. And started talking about Jalen Duren. And I'm with the Lakers on that. Like, that should be the priority. Duren also reportedly talking to the Kings as well, but if you're Jalen Duren, short of a massive amount more of money coming from Sacramento, you're not interested in going to Sacramento. You'd much rather be in LA with the Lakers, with Luka, and have an opportunity to maybe actually win something next year. Although adding Duren, even if Luka's, well, I was going to say even if Luka's healthy and you add Duren, I still don't know if they're a threat to the Spurs or the Thunder, but you get Luka healthy in a 7-game series, I don't want to say anything's possible, but the likelihood increases that something crazy could happen. So good on the Lakers for pushing back on whatever attempt at leverage that was from LeBron. And again, I'm not saying LeBron doesn't end up in the Bay Area. It could definitely happen. Because what other options does he have? But it doesn't sound like he's going to get his dream of taking AD with him or getting a big fat number out of the deal. If LeBron would have just taken a step back and understood, and look, I get it. They don't win the Rocket series without him. I'm not saying LeBron doesn't still have value. But if LeBron would have just taken a step back, read all the tea leaves, and said, hey, I can stay in LA. It's just not going to be at the number that soothes my ego. If I'm willing to just take that step back financially for 1 year, my final year at this age, I can stay happy and stay in LA. All of this would have been avoided. But instead, he might end up getting a similar number, maybe a tiny bit more, to go up to Golden State and the Bay Area Unks try to make some kind of run. But without his buddy AD. Lakers have won that leverage game, I think, in the last 24 hours so far. Coming up, I'll get you a better two for tonight. We'll also wrap up with our 3 favorite moments of the show. Our 3 stars on the way next here on Westwood One Sports.
NFL training camp.
One Sports.
Our 3 stars of the day to wrap up the show, our 3 favorite moments from You Better You Bet today. In just a moment here on Westwood One Sports, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos. Carrington Harrison will be in tomorrow. I will be back on Thursday and Friday. I will not allude to what it may be, but we may have a very special guest on Thursday. I'll just leave it at that. That's called a tease, kids, in the radio business. I did want to get you one bet. I got another baseball bet for you. Maybe a pair of bets, but we'll get to that in a second. Footy continues. The summer of soccer. You can get an early payout for a 2-goal lead by placing a pregame bet on any World's Game match inside your BetMGM app. And then if your team takes a 2-goal lead at any point in that match, your bet pays out as a win. The winnings are yours, regardless of the final outcome of the game. Get it all inside the BetMGM app today. Download it, and please gamble responsibly. So, Tarek Skubal has been slowly trying to round back into form since coming off the IL. This will be his 4th start since coming off the IL. And tonight, talk about the perfect offense to refine things against. The Yankees lineup, who have, in their last 4 games, had 3 hits, 3 hits, 3 hits, and 3 hits. They have 12 hits in their last 4 games total, 3 hits apiece in each of those last 4 games. So you've also got Cam Schlittler going for the Yankees. He's given up more than 1 earned run just once in his last 6 starts. So I will be all over the unders. Full game total of 7.5. I'm not sure if I'm all in on that yet, but first 5 total of 3.5 I really like. You can find both of those inside your BetMGM app right now. I just saw something from Ramona Shelburne of ESPN on social media. Somebody sent it to me, one of my Lakers fan friends, that said there was apparently a meeting, special secret meeting, between Rob Pelinka and Luka Doncic a couple weeks ago. JJ Redick, too. Don't want to leave him out of the mix. And they presented him with all sorts of off-season options, none of which included LeBron James. Good timing on that story coming out, too. Lakers v. LeBron in the leverage game. Unless you're willing to take a hit on the salary cap number, LeBron, you ain't going to be back in L.A. Is it possible? Sure. Like I've said multiple times, 6 p.m. Eastern, NBA free agency opens up. Anything is possible between now and then and even beyond that time. I just don't think it's probable. All right, our 3 favorite moments of the show. It is time for our 3 stars of the day. Let it go.
3.
Oh, Morant with a steal. Morant for 2.
FanDuel Sports Network Southeast. John Morant now in the Pacific Northwest. Traded to the Portland Trailblazers yesterday. How's it going to work? I think there's potential, if not a great likelihood, potential that it could work really well with Ja handling the ball. If he can get back to driving fearlessly to the rim the way he did at the peak of his powers several years ago, you're going to open up all sorts of space on the floor and shooting opportunities for Damian Lillard and Denny Avdija. I think this could work for Portland. Will it work? That's all up to Ja Morant and how Micah Nori handles him offensively, especially emphasizing the pick and roll and the floor spacing to find those shots for Dame and Denny. Number 2 star.
2.
49ers owe him no money until the season starts. If they get some kind of offer beyond a late 7th round pick in a couple of years, probably they'll move him, but I don't think they will. So maybe they just wait until training camp and release him. Maybe they hope against hope somebody will offer something. I can't. If you're the Commanders, you want any part of that? I have a hard time believing that.
Andrew Brandt, there's nobody better on the business and the law of sports. Earlier in the show, talking about some sort of resolution maybe coming later during training camp between the Niners and Brandon Ayuk. I've said it before, I'll say it again. My personal plea and suggestion to Brandon Ayuk, just stop talking on social media, okay? Just sit back and wait for this thing to play out, because you've cratered any and all trade value you may have had. And John Lynch is going to just, as Andrew put it, squat on you until he has to pay you a dime. And then at that point, maybe you get released and you get to go off with your BFF Jaden in Washington. Our number one star of the day?
1.
It's about the moment. It's not just about like which round did you make or how far did you go. That will determine this. And so, like, if they're in the quarterfinals against Spain, they lose a close game, I'm not going to be like, well, what a disappointment. I'm going to say, damn right, they did pretty well this tournament. So I think it's going to be coming down to like how they perform against a team that is considered at or above their talent level, and that hasn't happened yet.
Anthony DeBundo covering the World Cup for The Ringer earlier on today's show. You know, I've made a very impassioned case over the last couple of days about how the expectations for the U.S. men's national team have to get ratcheted up a bit after the way they performed in the group stage, and now what's laid out in front of them over the next couple of rounds. Bosnia tomorrow night, and then either Belgium or Senegal in the round of 16, with Jurgen Klopp calling them the best U.S. men's national team ever, with Eric Winalda coming on our airwaves and saying, no, they can go to the semis. I've made that impassioned plea that the expectations should be, you're capable of getting through to the semis. Let's see it. Now, as Anthony points out, if that happens against teams that maybe you're more talented than, maybe it's a little less impressive. If going to the quarters and losing in penalty kicks to Spain is the way you go out, maybe there's still some level of satisfaction there. But for me, I'm starting to get to the point where we round the corner from, soccer's fun, huh? To, I believe that we will win. And if that's the case, expectations need to be ratcheted up just a little bit, even if it means getting to the quarterfinals and meeting a powerhouse like Spain. Great stuff from Anthony. Appreciate him coming on the show to talk about the World Cup earlier. Phenomenal stuff from Andrew Brandt. Go pre-order Smarter About Sports on Amazon. His new book is out 2 weeks from today on July 14th. Appreciate his time as well. Appreciate the entire crew behind the scenes keeping things on the rails today. Another phenomenal job by Mike on the video, Grant and Laura on all the audio, Tyler regaling us with stories of his 40 in the group chat. Thank you, Tyler, and Bill for resisting the temptation to yell at me about not including the Chicago Bears in my top 5 NFL offensive line power rankings earlier. Everyone showed a great amount of restraint. And even to Bill in Toronto, I know you didn't call in, but I'd like to thank you, Bill, for inspiring us to a conversation about how Major League Baseball All-Star voting has been ruined by people like you, Toronto Blue Jays fans. Swear to God, if Alejandro Kirk makes the All-Star game. Black and Abdallah up next. Talk to you guys on Thursday right here on Westwood One Sports.